All right, all right, all right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our 2026 Southern Documentary Fund Production Grant Info Session number two. This is the second info session. We had one earlier, I think it was like last month, was the first one. This is the second one. And like I was saying earlier, the deadline is Friday night, midnight. Get them in quickly. All right, let's go ahead and share the screen here and get started. Hold on one second. Right, let me share my screen. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. Like I said, I'm gonna go through this first, and then we'll take some time to answer any questions that you guys may have. All right, cool. Well, here is the application for the 2026 production grant. Um, as you see at the top, it's pretty much just a standard introduction about what this grant is, and how much it's for, and the whole selection process. So grants are awarded for 15,000 each to 7 film projects. So we pretty much go through a couple of rounds of reviews, things like that, and then we narrow it down to 7 projects, and we give those projects 15,000 each. And it ranges. It can be features, shorts, docu series, experimental documentary. Those are kind of like the 4 categories that we look for. Also, I just got to give a huge shout out um, to the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. The MacArthur Foundation, a lot of people know about them, but their generous support helps us with this grant. Also, Just Films, Ford Foundation, also the Wincoat Foundation as well. Without these 3 organizations, this grant wouldn't be possible. So I always have to just give them a huge thank you and shout out for believing in this grant and what it has done over the years as well for Southern makers and also Southern documentary storytelling as well. What we fund, this program is for Southern makers. We fund nonfiction documentary films, like I was saying earlier, shorts, features, docu-series, experimental. The story must be in one of the following Southern states. These are the states that we support so far, which are Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia. Also, the project has to be in production, meaning that you have to be currently filming the project, because we do have to see some sample footage from the current production as well. Proposals that are in research and development or post production, or you're looking for impact or engagement funding. This isn't the grant for you. But if you reach out, say, hey, Chris, I don't really qualify for the production grant, but do you know of any other grants that are out here that are, can fund impact distribution or post production or research and development? I do. So if that's you, just reach out to me. My email is in the chat box. Just email me, and I can send you a couple of links to check out a couple other grant opportunities, because we all sharing opportunities. People hit us up all the time, say, hey, Chris, can you share this with your network at Southern Doc Fund? And we do the same, when we launch our stuff, our initiatives, and they do the same. So we're all about sharing resources. Sometimes you may not be a fit for us, or sometimes you might not be a fit for that other grant that's over there. And then, and we just always try to point people in the right direction, Because at the end of the day, we want you to, make the best film possible and get it out there into the world, whether it's with us or with another organization. All right, eligibility. I know a lot of people always ask about eligibility. If you have a special circumstance, you can email me. If it's something that we might need to discuss over the phone, just email me. We can hop on a quick call today. Actually, I got some time all this afternoon to take people questions. If they want to, converse on the phone quickly. But if you have just a quick question, just put it in the chat and we'll get to it after I go through the application. Project directors should reside or have deep roots in one of the following southern states, pretty much the states I just gave you. This grant prioritizes stories made in or about the American South, pretty much, in those one of those southern states. Also, this is key. Applicants must have a U.S. Social Security number or U.S. federal tax ID number. That's how you get paid. You got to have that. So if you get the grant, this is how we're able to pay you. Also, applicants must be 18 years of age or older. Also, you can't be enrolled in any film school or seeking funds for a student project. And like I said, if you have a special circumstance, email me and we can talk about it, to see if you qualify to apply. Selection criteria, projects will pretty much be chosen upon the following, falls in scope with our mission and values. Pretty much our mission is to uplift the South, to showcase those type of stories that are in the southern states that we support. Primary team members have a strong connection to the story. We look at that. We want to make sure that you as the filmmaker have a strong connection to the story. And it could be, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the application because there is a section on connection and access. And we'll talk more about that. Also, we want to make sure that you have a very, very thorough application proposal. Budget fundraising plan is always key. Definitely a budget. We'll talk more about that in the application fundraising plan as well. The project director and their key collaborators possess the skills necessary to successfully complete the project. Also, your audience as well and how to reach them. Also, a completed application and all requested documents. So many people forget to do this. You want to make sure you have all the materials that we ask for when you submit. That's pretty much standard. That's pretty much what it is at the end of the day. If you meet all these things, make sure you have all the materials attached, links are working, the whole nine when you submit your application. Cool. And like I said, we are recording this. So it will be available, I'll say, by tomorrow on the website. This next part here is pretty self-explanatory. It's just the standard info, project title, the project type, your experience as a filmmaker, your name as the applicant, phone number, email, mailing address, all required. Also, secondary contact information. You want to have a secondary contact person, meaning that, say, if you get the grant and we reach out to you, we don't hear from you for like a week or so, we really need you to be able to accept the grant. So if people are filming, people are out of town sometimes on vacation. And so make sure you have maybe a secondary contact, whether it's a co-producer, somebody that you trust, that they can be your secondary contact, just in case we need to reach out to you to get more information. It could be one of your producers, co-directors, someone that you really trust, that if we can't get up with you, we can get up with them to get the necessary materials or anything that we might need during this whole process. Also, you want to check all that apply. You're 18 years of age or older. You have a U.S. Social Security number or U.S. federal tax ID, and you have deep roots or you're a resident of one of those southern states. And then now we get into the application process. So all this stuff right here is pretty self-explanatory. It's easy stuff. But this is where we get started with the whole application. So first things first, it's very simple, but still some people make it complicated. Don't overcomplicate it. The log line is something that you'll need really throughout the whole film process, not just for applying for this grant or other grants. This is really your selling piece. The log line is what people are going to read before they even probably look at a trailer. So the log line is pretty much a quick summary, 2 to 3 sentence max. summary of your project that captures those most important elements, setting, participants, key issues, and form. So if you need examples of log lines, I think I said it on the last Zoom session. IMDb. I always go on there, look at people's log lines. You can look up different documentaries that you've enjoyed watching, and you can go on there and check out their log lines. You know what I'm saying, and just see how they kind of structured theirs, and kind of play around with yours a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But the log line is that catchy 2 to 3 sentence summary about your project that's really going to catch the eye of someone to continue looking through that deck, continue to look through the materials that you're pitching, all of that. So it's not just important for a grant application. It's going to be important for your whole film, through production, through post-production, and definitely while you're doing screenings and distribution. So, log line, it may not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal in the overall grand scheme of things with your production as a whole. But that goes there. Topic summary is next. Pretty much the topic summary is like pretty much the background of your topic, really. So explain the topic. So, like, for example, I'm finishing up a martial arts documentary about a guy named Victor Moore, former, world karate champion from back in the day when karate became a professional sport. And so, the background that I kind of used, my topic summary was really talking about that era of the 60s, back in the day, when karate first became a professional sport. You also had the rise of Bruce Lee, the Bruce Lee effect, when everyone wanted to start taking martial arts classes because the big martial arts movie boom that was happening, in the 60s and 70s. So I kind of gave some context of why, this project is important, and also the martial arts history background in the African American culture as well. So that's what you want to do. You kind of want to explain the topic, the themes, the context, the stakes, the relevance that this project is going to be talking about. So that's what you kind of put right here. Film summary is pretty much like the film synopsis, and you can also look up synopsises, on IMDb as well, of films that they have their log line on there, but a lot of them have their synopsis as well. And so, the synopsis, the film summary, is pretty much an overview introducing the main participants and plot points in your film. If your project is a non-narrative or not character-driven type of story, what is your concept and how is it constructed? So please be clear about the elements of your story that remain unknown. Sometimes that happens. We're filming and there are still some things that we are still unsure about, because, the filming process will maybe open that up a little bit more, but you want to kind of talk about that, and the things that you really want to hopefully show in this film by uncovering those things. Next is the artistic approach. This is always a key one. This is pretty much describing the artistic vision for the project, and you want to be very, very descriptive, very descriptive. Don't be vague with this, be very descriptive. What are the elements of this project? Like, is it going to be a straight verite style documentary, where we're going to kind of have, be like a fly on the wall to observe the story and the characters? What's the music? What's the music like? Are you using hip hop elements? Are you using jazz, rock, electronic dance music? You know what I'm saying? What will this project sound like, as well? Are you using archival materials, whether it's photography, articles, news footage? Be very descriptive of some of those things if you're using those things in the project. Does it fit, with any specific filmmaking or narrative traditions? Like I was saying, are you using like a verite style approach? Are you going to do a mixture of talking heads, verite, animation? What are some examples? I know with the artistic approach that I used one time at a grant for the martial arts project, we had, the basic approach of how we wanted visually, but I wanted to also give some context as well of what I was explaining. So I said, the tone, the tone and feel is very similar to The Wrestler that starred Mickey Rourke. Even though it was a narrative film, the feel of it and tone was very similar to my martial arts project, meaning that, is very dark. The tone, the color palette. Also, is we're documenting a kind of like a forgotten champion, similar to what Mickey Rourke was in The Wrestler. The style of the score is going to be a very very similar style of the score. And then also I reference Red Belt as well. It's like a martial arts drama, a narrative film, same type of style and feel to it, with like a some type of martial arts, Asian score influence as well, similar to Red Belt. So I'll also use examples of certain films as well in your artistic approach description. Next is a pretty easy one, filmmaker statement. And like I said, we're going to go through this quickly and then we'll open it up for questions for you guys. Filmmaker statement is pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty much, so if it's just one director, they will just make the statement. If you have co-directors, which are two directors, you both can kind of put a statement in here. But it's pretty much, explaining who you are as a filmmaker. How is this project expanding or evolving your creative practice? What does success look like to you as an artist? What are the creative, professional, and holistic barriers and challenges that you're facing as an artist as well? Connection and point of view. We talked about this earlier. Connection and point of view is a very key one as well. What is your connection to the story? Whether it could be your connection with the participants, it could be the themes that you're connected with, it could be that community, it could be that town or city that the story is located in. You might have access to some archival material that you're the only one that has it, and so that's how you're connected to this thing. So it's just not community and location. When you think about connection to the story, you could be very close to the participants. You could be dealing with some of the same themes. Like, say, if you were, like me, this one person they were doing a documentary one time on being a diabetic. You know what I'm saying? They did it. They wanted to do this because they too were dealing with diabetes. You know what I'm saying? So they're dealing with the actual health, they're dealing with the theme and also that community. They're a part of that. You know what I'm saying? So that's a way that you can kind of think about it. Also, participants, like with me, with the Grand Master Project, the martial arts project, I knew Vic Moore through one of my old karate teachers. He studied under him for years. And so just knowing him, and he was the one that connected, me to him, what I'm saying? So that was pretty much knowing, the participants and some of their students that they've, taught over the years. So that's how you want to think about it. How are you connected to the story? What's your connection to the story? What lens, perspective, insights, or bias do you bring to the story as well? Accountability and community care. This is another one you want to think about. And with some of these, ones that you might not be comfortable with, we do have some PDF attachments. So with this one, accountability and community care, you really want to describe your ethical considerations and practices of accountability in your filmmaking process. Like, do you kind of share footage with your participants? Do you include them in feedback sessions? Do you know what the boundaries are? You know what I'm saying? Like, you really want to think about this stuff. For years, we didn't have to think about this. We just made the film and just made the best film possible. But we're in a new era now, you know what I'm saying? And we really got to start thinking about this stuff, and just to have better ethical practices in documentary. And so, you want to kind of take a look at this. We have a link right here You just click on it, it'll pop it up. DOG, they're the Documentary Accountability Work Group. Excellent organization. They pretty much have a framework for values and ethics and accountability. So they have some great tools here that you can think about. It's also going to help you think about, how you want to write this out as well. Another one that kind of piggybacks on that is safety and security. Um, if it's relevant, a lot of the docs that we do have sometimes safety concerns, not only for the subject, but also you as well as a filmmaker and your crew. And you want to make sure that everyone's safety is thought about, whether it's you as the filmmaker, your crew, and also your participants as well. And so you want to, reflect on any safety or security concerns throughout the life cycle of the project. And I think we always just think about just the production part. We don't think about, okay, after the film is done and we're doing screenings and distribution, there still are safety and security concerns that you still have to think about. So you want to think about these things, and write out your plan. We do have a safety and security handbook. Just click on that. So we do give you some tools to help with this process. And so this is a great handbook. I'm using it now. So I'm actually applying to a couple of grants myself. This is a good handbook. Accessibility, this is another one you want to think about. It's just not, with captions. You definitely want to have captions, subtitles for your films now, because of hearing impaired and stuff like that. But also you want to think about accessibility through the whole filmmaking process as well. Like I had to think about it. I didn't realize it, but Grandmaster Moore, the guy that I'm doing the film on, he's in a wheelchair. And so I had to make sure that places we're going to film and stuff like that, I had to make sure they were wheelchair accessible. Even when we did some work in progress events, some of the places I had to make sure that they had wheelchair accessibility and things like that. And so doing that project made me think about these things a little bit more about, accessibility, not only for the subject, but my crew as well. You know what I'm saying? Some people might be dealing with health issues. So you don't, you want to make sure you might have certain things on set, just in case they need that. So you want to think about some of these things. Um, and this is kind of like gives you an overview of how to think about that for this part. And then we also have different toolkits and things like that around accessibility and things like that that you can think about to kind of develop your ideas about that. Audience is big. Audience is big. That's what it's all about. That's why we make these films, is to reach an audience and for them to experience it and get something out of it and engage with the material. So we definitely want you to describe your audience. Don't be vague. Don't be vague. Be very particular. Now, we all kind of have a vague view of audience because, we want everybody to see it. That's self-explanatory, but who are those people that you want to see, that you want to see engage with your film? With mine, with Grandmaster Moore, mine was, martial artists, people that grew up, watching Bruce Lee, a fan of Bruce Lee and Power Rangers and anything that related to martial arts. That's the audience that I want to tap into. Also, young African American men as well, because martial arts has proven over time that it helps strengthens the mind, body, and spirit, especially in the African American community. And we take it back. We use historical reference, how the Nation of Islam used martial arts. Other youth community programs back in the 70s utilized martial arts. So those are some of the things you want to think about, when you want to, put down your audience for your project, and be very, very specific. Intended impact is pretty much right next to audience. We want to have some type of impact, with our projects, no matter how big or small. I know the impact that I wanted to do with my very first one. I did a film called Wilmington on Fire years ago about the 1898 Wilmington Massacre. The impact that I wanted it to me, I think it's finally happened, 10 years later, is that a lot of folks in the community of Wilmington are really starting to take the history and do their thing. We have, my man Cedric, he has an excellent Black History tour that's based around the history of 1898. Seeing him do his thing for years with that. Also, there's a book that just came out by Lauren Collins. I'm actually featured in the intro. I think it's called They Stole a City. It's by Lauren Collins. Big people have probably heard about it because it's been big over the past couple months. But she features me in the introduction and says that Wilmington on Fire inspired her to do this, and so that's what we wanted. That was the impact. We didn't see it immediately, but over time we saw the impact, and that was we wanted to inspire people to continue to tell this history in different creative ways, whether it's through book, songs, poetry, other movies. We've seen other docs, like PBS did a doc on 1898 as well. So that was our impact. We didn't see it immediately, but eventually it happened. And that's what you want to do right here. What's the impact that you want to happen with your project? And then if you still need some reference, we do have the Impact Field Guide. Great resource. Next is a pretty simple one, but people still make it hard. This one is key creative personnel. And like I said, people that are hopping on, we will get to everyone's question as soon as we go through this. We're almost done with the application. I just want to make sure we have enough time to answer people's questions, because you can always go back to this and, kind of hear my talking points. Key creative personnel is pretty much, the key crew, the key team members, director, producer, if you have any advisors or an executive producer, your editor, those type of things, the key people that are going to put this thing together. And so you want to list them here with a very brief bio, just kind of giving some background summary of each person, just to kind of show their relevant expertise. It doesn't have to be a whole page, just one or two, like 2 sentences for each person, and their title and their role for this particular project. Creative control is pretty simple too. Pretty much one or 2 sentences, pretty much just describe who has the legal ownership of this project, who owns this film. That's pretty much what it is, who owns this film. Project stage and timeline is pretty simple as well. Pretty much we really want to see what has been the timeline for this project, and it can change. It can change next year, it can change next month. We want to know what your plan is right now, currently, when you submit this proposal. What is that timeline from when you started until what you plan on reaching? But sometimes, it changes. Like with my Grand Master project, I think I applied to a grant 2 years ago. I was supposed to be done with it by now, but I haven't, because we're still raising money. So on these new grants, I have to update the timeline. And so you want to kind of list that here, from when you started through production, what you plan to have the timeline for post-production, and then that timeline for, premiere, festivals, and the timeline to, that release date for distribution. And like I said, this is just what it is now. That could change. We all know it could change. Things happen, COVID, but life just happens that, may push some stuff back. But we just want to see, what is your plan for today? We're almost done here. Then we'll get right into some questions. The financial information, this is very key as well. Fundraising. Fundraising is a major part of what we look at as well, because, if you get our grant, it's just 15 grand. You need more money than that. So, I would always tell people, you got to look at fundraising with films. And it doesn't matter whether it's narrative or documentary. Film is film. Raising money is hard as hell. It's always been. But to me, it's harder and it's easier. I think both kind of go hand in hand. I think nowadays you have to do grants. You have to raise money through individuals. That's why I think having a fiscal sponsor is always key. So if people are interested in that, email me. We do provide fiscal sponsorship. And it's pretty cool, because donors that donate to your project directly, those donors get like a tax write-off. So I think you have to apply to grants, You have to raise money through fiscal sponsorship. Crowdfunding is always a good one. I think you have to do a mixture of that. I suggest Seed and Spark. They're great. Not only are they a great partner with us, I've used them personally over the years, and they're the best to me. So I think that also, corporate philanthropy. You can maybe find a corporation or organization that their themes or your themes in your film aligns with what they're about and what they want to support. So it's some work to it now. It's not going to come right into your lap. You will have to research. You will have to write the applications and do your due diligence. But at the end of the day, if you have some type of plan, something's going to work out for you. And I think with the fundraising strategy, you want to have about 3 to 4 different, plans of trying to raise money. You just don't want to rely on only just grants. You just don't want to only rely on crowdfunding either. You're going to have to do a multiple of things. And so to me, that's the best strategy is, planning that out. Of course, you might not stick to it all the way, but we want to see that you have a thorough plan and you thought about it as well. The grant impact. Um, this is a simple one, but sometimes people make it complicated. Just pretty much stating, if you receive this grant, how will you spend it and how will the funds help you move your project forward? It doesn't have to be that long. It can just be a couple of sentences, small paragraph. Funding detail. This is pretty much kind of like a breakdown of different funding sources that you're looking for, and where you're at in that process. So the examples right here, how you can lay it out. So you're pretty much going to list the funding source first. So say like you're applying to our grant, you can put SDF production grant right here, and then you can put 15,000, and then the status you can put, to apply or applied, and so that's pretty much what it is. So, say like if you had, a potential donor that you've been talking to, say a State Farm or something, that they say, hey, we like, the themes in your documentary align to what we're about. We want to give you 10 grand, towards this. And so you will put that here, State Farm, the amount, and you can say like in discussion, So say if you got a grant, you would put secured. So that's what you want to do right here in your funding detail, is kind of map out where you're at in that fundraising process, who all have you applied to, or who all have you reached out to, and kind of, put the amount and then the status as well. It's very simple. We're almost done here, and we'll get to your questions really soon. Let me just get through this. Um, the budget. People all the time struggle with budgeting. I'm one of them that struggles still. But we do have a great, great breakdown template right here. Just click this blue link. Gives a great template that the IDA put together. That's pretty much the standard budget layout that's in the industry, the documentary industry. So I would suggest to use this budget template if you're kind of struggling with what one is. And you can adjust things in this template, but definitely make you a copy, click this link. And it also has a whole thing where you can read and different tips and tricks. But when you get your budget done, whether it's a PDF or Excel spreadsheet, you just choose the file and upload it. But definitely click this blue for an introduction on documentary budgeting, and has templates as well. So definitely check out this page. I'm actually utilizing this page now for my own documentary that I'm working on my budget, updating my budget and get some stuff with that. So this is a good tool right here. Visual samples, we're almost done. Visual samples, these are very key too. Because you're in production, we want to see what this thing kind of looks like. We know it's not all the way complete, but there's some things we can tell by the samples. So first off, we do have a spot. It's not required, but we do have a spot for the director's prior work. Say if the director for the project that you're submitting has a great doc out, or hell, they've done a narrative before. And you just want to kind of say, hey, we have a person with experience in directing, a film project. You can put that link here. Just make sure the link works. If it has a password, make sure you include that in this as well. The current sample is really, really the most important in this part, though. This is the sample that's going to give us a taste, of view of what your project is about that you're submitting for. The sample does need to be at least 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes. Our reviewers are only required to look up to 5 minutes. Me personally, I like to look at the whole thing, but our reviewers are not required. So make sure you got the best 5 minutes that you possibly have, that you can have on this thing. But it can be more than 5 minutes, but the minimum is 5 minutes. And if you have a certain 5 minute space, write the you pretty much write those time codes in here as well. Like, hey, I want you to focus on these 5 minutes right here. And so with the sample, you really want to show it as best as you can, the story, the style, at least one of the characters. You know what I'm saying? You really want to kind of give a glimpse of really that artistic approach that you're describing in the artistic approach section. That should kind of match your work sample. They kind of go hand in hand. Now you might not get everything because, if the sound isn't always good, that's cool. We know this is a sample. This isn't an actual finished piece from the film, but we want to see that there's a story there. You got access to the characters, and that, it's going to leave something to the imagination. So this is one of my favorite parts of viewing, is this sample spot. And it could be a YouTube link. It could be, I think they got like frame.io now, where you can share stuff. Vimeo has always been my go-to for years. Just whenever you put the link in here, make sure it works. Make sure it works. Make sure you have, your privacy settings, whatever you need, so that we can view it. We're not going to share this stuff. We don't share none of it, but we need to view it. You know what I'm saying? So we can give you, your accurate score, so you can, be able to compete in this process. And then after that, after the current sample, it's pretty much a wrap. You pretty much, we have a couple of questions that you got to answer. Have you received support from us in the past? All this is kind of like survey stuff we need to evaluate what we're doing, and also report to our funders as well. How did you learn about the grants? Also, this is a key one that we like to utilize too. What organizations, because we don't know everybody. Some people are doing some amazing things all over the place, and we want to know, like, if you're in Florida, you in Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, if y'all got some organizations that are doing great things for documentary filmmakers, let us know. We would love to partner with them, possibly maybe partner on some webinars, or maybe do some screenings together. So we don't know until you tell us. So that's why we put this here. So if you really want to push for some organizations that are doing some great work for the documentary community in your area, write them down, let us know. And then after that, just standard survey. It's optional. You do not have to answer it, but it does help us gauge of certain things that we're doing. So it got race, ethnicity, all that good stuff, gender, if you're a person with disability. So after you get all that demographic stuff in there, you hit submit. You hit submit, and then also through the process, you can save the draft as well. I suggest don't do that. I always do my application in a Word document on Google Drive. I always do my whole thing. I kind of copy, and paste these questions, type them out, and then when I'm ready to submit, I just do a copy and paste into the spots where they need to go. And that way I know I always have my stuff saved. I'm not trying to save it on here. You can, but you never know, man. Some of this stuff is tricky. I don't trust it. I'd rather save my work on the actual document. And then when it's time to submit, I can just copy and paste. But to each his own. I'm just telling you what has worked for me. and I've seen all type of stuff mess up. So I don't, I want you guys to be able to get your application in, and you ain't got to worry about all that mess. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, let's go ahead and stop this, share, and answer your questions. Then we got about 20 minutes. Let me go ahead and stop this. Let's get some questions here. Let me see. See, we got Joel here. I'm gonna go in the chat, then I'm gonna go to the Q&A. Say reviewers are told they only have to watch 5 minutes. Um, they don't have to watch just 5 minutes. We just say, hey, 5 minutes is the limit. They can't just be just watching an hour of footage. They have things to do. We just say you're required. They're only required to watch five, but they can watch how much they want. Most reviewers watch the whole thing, like I do, but they can watch. They're only required to watch 5 minutes because you have to have at least 5 minutes of footage to have a sample to submit. Let me see here. See, I'm a Florida-based filmmaker, but my documentary follows a traveling circus elephant, so stories take place across multiple states. Me being based. Wendy, yeah, I think you'll be pretty good. If you have the circus in some of those states, I think you should be fine. But email me. Let's talk on the phone a little bit more about it because I have to ask you a few more questions. Wendy, Brian Michaels, email me, chris@southern-documentaryfund.org. All right. Kayla, can you break down the difference between topic summary and film summary? Yeah, topic summary is pretty much so say if your documentary is about, like I said, martial arts, for example. So the topic summary will kind of give a background um, of the topic. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of started off about just the whole background of martial arts in the United States, and then also martial arts within the Black community. And then I go right into Grandmaster Moore, the guy that I'm doing the film on. Film summary is more of the synopsis. So meaning that you're going to be talking more about the film more than the background. So film summary is about, your subject or subjects, kind of like an introduction to them, a little bit about their background and how they're relevant to this film. Story arc, all that stuff. Let me see. The deadline. Deadline is midnight this Friday. The timeline for notifying recipients. So pretty much we will have a decision. We will notify people throughout the process. So there is another round after this one. So people that make it to that round will get a notification. That typically happens around, I would say, like top of October. And then after that, the final 7 that's chosen, we're going to have that decision, I would say, about around the second week of November. So the final round people that get chosen for the final 7 will get notified. And then also folks that don't get it, that were in the final round, you'll get notified as well around the same time as well. So pretty much by about second week of November, everything should be wrapped up and people will have their notifications, whether they got it or not. Let me see here. Tim Fennell. I created a pretty well edited sizzle reel, but it's only 3 minutes. I have a spinoff podcast from interviews. Can I include podcast? Yeah, you can include that in there. To flesh it out to 5. You can include that, in that to flesh it out to 5. For the sample, can it be a vertical video? We've released parts of our footage online and social media story. Yeah, it can be vertical. It can be vertical, long as you have at least 5 minutes. Does the current sample length requirement changes based on the length of the film? For example, can it be a bit shorter for a 15, 20-minute doc? Yeah, it can. If you have a short, you can have your footage a little bit shorter. We we would want you to have at least about 3 minutes for a short. If you have at least 3 minutes for a short doc, but feature at least five. Let me see. I'm fortunate to have a letter of support from SCTV. You pretty much put that. You pretty much, Tim, you want to put that, I would say, in your application. Let me pull it up here. You definitely want to mention that. Let me see. Yeah, I will put that. Yeah, I'll put that in the audience part, because you can talk a little bit about, it sounds like they may want to do some broadcasts with you. So you definitely want to talk about that because that's because that audience, the broadcast audience is very lucrative. It's a very big audience for the documentary space. We got Kirsten Wilbert. Can we apply if we have not started the film but have prior films that we can show? No, you have to be started. You have to have started the film. It sounds like you're in development, research and development. I can send you a couple of funding organizations that support that stage of production. All right, let me get into these Q&As. Cool, got 10 minutes. Try to knock these out. But let me put my email in this chat as well before I answer these next questions. Definitely email me. You got a few days. You got to about, I would say Friday. You got to email me about Friday, 2 o'clock. Documentaryfund.org. Right. Okay, we got let's see, already have a trailer, but it's on 3 minutes and length. Can I add uncut scenes to the end to go up and over 4 minutes, or over 10 minutes? Yeah. For the sample, you can do it different ways. The sample I did for my martial arts project, and I got a couple of grants for it over the years. I had a trailer, and then I had like two scenes after that. So you can kind of do it however you want, as long as you get that 5 minute mark, at least 5 minutes. So if you have a trailer and you have like a scene, you can put that in there. So it doesn't have to just be a complete scene. It could be multiple scenes. It can be a long trailer. So it's really the best way for you to showcase, that film. And it shows the access to the characters, the story that's there, all of that. So you can do it multiple ways. I've done it like that. That's how I love to do it. I love to start off with a trailer of some sort to kind of give people, some type of, kind of sizzle them a little bit. And then it goes into maybe one or two scenes. See, I have a previous work sample which directly speaks about the issues of my film, which screened at festivals, but which is different in style. It's much more of an art film meant for a gallery. It's also older, almost 10 years old. The project itself will be more cleanly shot. And I have other more recent work made for clients, which better demonstrates this. What do you think would be a more effective sample? Well, really, we want footage that you have in the grant that you're submitting for. I'm saying, in the film that you're submitting for. So you can use some of those other pieces of footage if you're going to use some of that in the actual film that you're submitting the grant for. But we want to see, the style and tone of the current film that you're submitting for. Let's see. Son Raquel, does 100% of the film have to be shot in the southern states? Producer direct lives in the South. 1/3 film is shot. Sandra, email me. Email me. We have to talk a little bit more about that. Email me. We got Morgan Chen. How many applications do you receive a year? We get close to 200. We get close to 200 applications each year. The securing of the funding affect this grant decision? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's only a small part of. We look at the overall application. Because you got funding somewhere else. We don't. You know, that's not the major factor. We look at the whole application as a whole. We just don't look at like one part. You know, who are the reviewers? We pretty much have reviewers that you know they've they've worked at film festivals, so they're like festival programmers. We've had former filmmakers. Pretty much a nice set of reviewers that have done documentary films, they've programmed documentary films, they've done grant reviews before at other organizations. Right. Already answered that one. All right, we got an anonymous person. My project just started production, so we don't have a full-fledged cinematic sample. Is that okay, or should projects be deep in production? Yeah, you wanna even if you just started production, you probably can still put something together. You can probably put a scene together. I know when I first shot Wilmington on Fire, I think we only shot one day of stuff, but we were still able to put together like 5 minutes of a scene. So see if you can at least put a scene together that you can stretch to 5 minutes to just show, the character, the access, and that there's a story there. If you already have local support from the local economic development or tourism office, does that help or hurt? It doesn't hurt you at all. If you already got support, because our $15,000 grant, isn't going to be the whole thing that you need. Definitely put, if you have that financial support, definitely put that on your application in the funding sections. You want to talk about that. That's not going to hurt you at all. That helps. And that's a good one, man. I know they're anonymous, but people should definitely look into what they're talking about. Like I said, you can learn some things not only just from me, but just some of the people that are putting things in the Q&A box. He's talking some real stuff. It's stuff that I've utilized as well, where you can see if you can tap into whether whatever town or city you're at. Every town and city has some type of economic development or tourism office, and your film can actually help with that. Like with Wilmington on Fire has done so much for the city of Wilmington with tourism. It's crazy, and so we can get support. Like a friend of mine, he did a film in Tampa, and the city of Tampa gave him support because of the film and how you're hiring locally, for PAs, and you're buying, you're working with local caterers, and you're booking hotel rooms. All that stuff is a part of economic development. So folks, definitely, whatever city, county you're in, reach out to the local economic development department, the tourism office, to see what type of resources that might be there for you. Because if you can showcase, hey, this project can do this, this, and that, there may be some dollars for you, or they might can point you in the direction to get some dollars. That was a good question. Can pre-interview footage be used in the sample? Yes. If you feel, Ebony Price, if you feel like that footage is good, you can use it. But you don't want to just apply to a grant just to apply to it. You want to make sure that you have your stuff right and tight. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have it, don't force it. There are other grant opportunities. It might take you another year to get everything together. So if you feel like you're not in the position right now, it's okay. I do it as well. I have to do it for my own films. Sometimes I can't, I'm just not there yet to apply to a certain grant. It might not be until next year I'm ready. And that's okay. But if you feel like those pre-interviews are really good and they capture what your film is about, the look and feel, definitely use them. Let me see. All right, get through these, and then I got a few more left. Brian Overholt, how much footage needs to be shot? I have footage, but don't have a representation edit cut. The larger film yet? Have scenes? Can my past work sample serve? No, your past work sample can't serve. It has to be from this film that you're submitting for. just put a scene together. It doesn't have to be color graded. It doesn't have to be sound mixed. Put a sample scene together. Just curious, on average, how many applicants would you say apply to this grant? We get close to 200 every year. In the budget, can we include some compensation for above the line crew? Yes, we want director producers to get paid. We want you to have a full budget, so we want to see that you're getting paid on there. So if you're the director, you need to have a line item on there for the director. If you're the producer, it needs to be on there. We're about making sure the maker gets paid. And I think a lot of times we exclude that. We don't do that. So we want to see a full budget from development to completion. And if you're the director, we want to see a line in there for the director that gets paid too. And on that sample budget, it's on that sample budget. It has everything in there. Can we see a sample application from previous winners? Who are the previous winners' films? We can't share that application. We have to get permission from them, but you can go. I can show you who won last year. Hold on, let me pull it up. I'll put it in the chat because we do have it on our website. Hold on. It should be in the grant section. Hold on, let me get it on here. Hold on. See here. One second. Trying to navigate. Hold on here. Morgan, give me a sec. I think I have your email. I'll send you a link to that. It's somewhere on the website. It's in one of the news sections. Hold on. I just don't want to take up time, but I'll send it to you in a sec. Just give me a sec. Brittany Blue Washington. Let's see. Would have the most successful and memorable applications have in common. Okay, they have a good question. Um, what have the most successful and memorable applications have in common that you may not have mentioned yet? Um, like I said, what we look for, we want to see that you have a connection with the story, connection with with the access as well, a fundraising plan, that's key, and a pretty solid work sample. That really shows that you have an interesting story. As well. I think those are some of the key things we look for. But we do look at the overall application as well. We want to make sure that you have a thorough application, because you're not only going to use this application for our grant, you can use this for other grant opportunities as well. Because a lot of the major documentary funders, we all use this core app, so it's very transferable as well. Let me see here. Go back. We got a little time for a few more questions. Let me get in here. See who else had one. Okay. Kirsten, is there a preferred length duration of the completed film that reviewers look for? No, we want you to submit at least 5 minutes of footage. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Trez. It's like documentary therapy. Thank you. I appreciate that. But the thing is, I know what you guys are going through. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm in it. Like I said, I'm back at doing grants myself for some of my projects. So I get it. This is a very frustrating process. But this is just one of the ways we have to fundraise, is doing it this way. That's why an advocate of not only just relying on the grants, but you're going to have to do other things. Crowdfunding, fiscal sponsorship is a good one. I'm about to get a fiscal sponsor for my project so I can actually seek out individual donors. And also with a fiscal sponsor, it opens you up for other grant opportunities because certain grants out there aren't like ours. Ours is open to anyone. You don't have to have a fiscal sponsor. You don't have to be a nonprofit. But certain grant opportunities, you're kind of shutting yourself out if you don't have a fiscal sponsor, because certain grant opportunities require you to have a fiscal sponsor. So having a fiscal sponsor only just it opens the door up because you can apply to both. You can apply to grants that don't require fiscal sponsorship, and you have access to grants that do require. So it doesn't hurt you at all. It only helps you. And with our fiscal sponsorship, we have a year-round mentorship program as well. So we try to go above and beyond, with some of these things. But I always suggest you got to have about 3 or 4 strong fundraising plans in order to do it. And how I do films now, if I can't figure out, like, at least have 4 different ways of raising money strongly, I won't even do the project. So that's how I'm thinking about it now, is that because we have to think about this stuff now. It's like, yo, how are we going to fund this? Also, I'm also looking at how am I going to monetize the project as well? Not only just doing a licensing with broadcast, but can I sell merchandise? Can I create some cool T-shirts to sell? Are there some other ancillary products? Can I create a photography book? Those type of things. With this project. If that's not the case, I just won't do it. So you want to think about those things. You want to think about those things when you're raising money and everything during this whole process. But again, thank y'all again. Morgan, I will email you that link to who won last year. We have it on our website somewhere. I just got to track it down. But I'm going to put my email right here. So if people have a question that they just need to hop on the phone today or tomorrow, email me and we can hop on a call. I'm free today till about 5. Put it in here. Hit me up today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'll be around. I pretty much have dedicated time the rest of this week because I know this is the final week for you guys to get your applications in. So yeah, definitely get them in. Definitely get them in by this Friday. Get those applications in. And again, good luck. Good luck to everyone. And like I said, we have some virtual things happening this week. We have a film screening. Let me put that link to our events calendar in here, just in case people want to check out some other stuff that we do. Here's our events calendar. So we have a virtual screening this Thursday, and then in the next few weeks we have a webinar as well. So definitely check those out this month. And again, you guys, good luck. Email me if you have any questions. Until next time, y'all have a good one.